Hi, this is Sean Perrin, and you're listening to episode 50 of the Clarinet Podcast, the show where I discuss all that's new and neat with clarinet with the neatest people in the industry. In today's episode, I speak with Peter Cigleris about his professional career as a freelance clarinetist in London, his latest album called English Fantasy, and how he became an early adopter of the Backun MoBa clarinets in spite of being halfway around the world at the time of their release. Peter shares some truly valuable advice that all clarinetists can use, such as the importance of finding balance between your artistic, business, and family lives, and ensuring that you're on the right path musically. The giveaway for today's episode is a signed copy of Peter's latest disc, and if you'd like a chance to win, please be sure to enter your email address at clarinet.com/subscribe. The Clarinet Podcast is brought to you in part by the support of its listeners, and this week I'd like to thank those who are purchasing their new and neat clarinet items at the Clarinet online store. I've got all sorts of things up there now, ranging from string ligatures and reed cases by Vientos Bamboo to a new rotary fingering chart by a guy I met in Chicago that's just a really cool idea. There's free shipping on all orders over $175 worldwide, and I've shipped to over 20 countries now, which is just absolutely amazing. So check that out if you're looking for something new, maybe see what we've got in stock, and help support the podcast at the same time. You can do this at www.clarinet.com/store. Today's episode was also brought to you by our sponsor, D'Addario Woodwinds. Thank you so much for listening. Sanding, shaping, balancing. For centuries, mastering your instrument meant mastering these crafts too. But now, D'Addario is refining craftsmanship for the 21st century by refining their reeds and mouthpieces with the world's most innovative techniques, so you can spend less time sanding, shaping, and balancing, and more time perfecting your own craft. To learn more about the new era of craftsmanship from D'Addario Woodwinds, visit d'addario.com/woodwinds. So I'm here today with Peter Cigleris, who is a freelance solo artist living in London. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me.
So you were recently featured as one of 1,000 Londoners in a video series. How did you come about this honor, and what was it like being interviewed for that?
Well, it's a very, very strange thing, really. How I got involved in this, one Sunday afternoon, that's a very boring thing to say, but myself and my wife, we were just doing, daily chores. We actually went shopping, grocery shopping and things like that. And in our local shopping centre, shopping mall, there was a camera set up and so a little table and things. And I was just curious and just stopped by. And the lady I spoke to then, she said, got talking how long have you lived in London? Were you born here originally and things? And he asked me to write down on some coloured paper. I think one of the questions was, what does London mean to you? What's one of your favourite places within the city? And what does it mean to be a Londoner? Or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly now what it was. It was about three years ago now. Mm-hmm. And I thought nothing of it. I kind of held these things up to the camera, and that was it. And then I, exchanged details. Just I think it was obviously some sort of project that they were doing, and obviously wanted to keep in touch with the people that did that element of it. And I got an email saying, would you be interested in being one of our first, I think it was the first 100 or something. Wow. And I can't remember my exact number, but I think I'm like in the 50s or something. It might be like 56, but if you go on the 1,000 Londoners website, I'm sure it will say on there. And yeah, basically that was that. So we arranged. A few months went by. I was trying to work out how we would do it, and I Yeah, that's right. The December of 2013, I was doing a Mozart quintet, like a chamber recital. And so part of that concert, I was going to play the Mozart quintet, some movements from the Max Bruch 8 pieces. And I think there was a piano trio as well, and another thing as well. And they came along to that and kind of videoed a little bit of the performance. And of course, it's a tiny, I think it's about 3 minutes long, isn't it, or something like that, the video. So it's a really real tiny snapshot. And the overall aim of that project is to try and document, it's just kind of, as the name suggests, 1,000 Londoners all across the whole spectrum, across the whole city, and of course, London is such a cosmopolitan and amazingly diverse city. And it's great, I think I went to the opening for that and watched the first 4, which included a chap that works as a tailor and is descended from the famous line of tailors that used to occupy a lot of the East End of London, Hackney, and sort of going towards Brick Lane. And they're all like kind of Jewish immigrants that came over at the turn of the 20th century and obviously subsequently before the Second World War and things like that. And there's obviously a very big tradition there of tailoring and high quality tailoring as well. And I think there was another chap that was a cage fighter and had won several trophies and things. So that was very, very interesting. I was very, very honoured to kind of be chosen for that, And I think, subsequently they've had obviously other musicians from all genres. So yeah, it was great fun just to kind of be asked to do that.
Yeah, it was a really cool video, and it is kind of neat how they followed you around to, the performance or the rehearsal of those pieces and those kind of things. I've been meaning to sort of watch a few more of them, but I feel like it's a huge task to get started with 1,000 to watch.
Well, that's the thing, and I have no idea where they're at the moment, but I think somebody at the time kind of suggested that to do 1,000 would take several years.
Yeah. I don't think they're done yet. Yeah. One of the things you say in the video that I really like probably the most was the path is not set, so you can wander as you like. And I thought that was kind of a perfect insight into the life of a freelancer. Would you walk me through what freelancing is like in London for a clarinet player like yourself?
Of course. The way you just said it made me sound very profound.
It was quite profound. I had to sit back and take it in for a moment.
Well, I think with life in general, you never know what life's going to throw at you, and I think being a freelance clarinetist musician, has that. You just never know what your inverted commas job is going to throw at you. I love the variety. That's I think that's for me is one of the the interesting perks of it. One day you might be in the studio doing a recording session, a jingle or something like that for the TV or whatever it might be, or some what they call library sessions of music that's been specially composed that might go on like as a backing for a documentary or whatever, and then the next day you might be teaching 5 students, and then the next day you might be going into one of the symphony orchestras in London or elsewhere in the country, and do a heavy program of Mahler or Tchaikovsky or whatever it might be, and then you might have a day off, and then you might have a solo recital or something like that, and I think it really does keep you on your toes, because music is not set, is it really? As a it's forever changing. Even the great works that everyone knows backwards, there's always somebody who will come with a different interpretation. I think that's the beauty of it. So that's, I suppose, a little tiny snapshot of perhaps what being a freelancer is like. It's the absolute variety and being open to, like I say, whatever comes your way, but also not being kind of too limited in trying to say focus on a solo career or a chamber music career or orchestral career. I think nowadays, we live very much in it's very much a kind of portfolio career, to kind of use that sort of cliche.
It's so funny you say that, because there's actually another podcast called The Portfolio Composer, and it's designed to help composers with their freelancing career and build themselves a portfolio of income opportunities. So that's really exactly what it's like. I'm myself a freelancer, and I think that many more musicians are having to become freelancers. I don't mean having in a negative connotation. I just mean that there's literally not the jobs out there once were for musicians. Do you think freelance is the way of the future for musicians?
Oh, I couldn't honestly say, to be honest. We'd have to look at the other, I suppose, social and political aspects. Really, because of course you have to ask yourself, well, why are there so many great players of all instruments, leaving conservatoires around the world and not being able to have those opportunities? And is that because the governments and things are they not actually funding culture and arts in general? Who knows? It's such a broad thing. It's such a broad topic to discuss. I think freelancing is definitely a way to have a career as a musician, definitely. And I think, like I said before, if you're open and willing to engage in different aspects of the industry, I think you could be very successful. I think gone are the days where people could kind of just go and walk into for example, orchestral positions or things like that. Competition is fierce, and so I think freelancing is a good way to kind of have the benefits, or reap the benefits of what there is on offer. I think it's just more to playing an instrument nowadays, definitely.
How do you deal with the uncertainty of freelancing? You mentioned that a little bit a minute ago, and sometimes it's true. You never quite know where your next opportunity is coming from, but there is something coming. How do you push forward with that?
It's difficult. Freelancing can be very much living a hand-to-mouth existence sometimes. Kind of making sure the rent's paid and making sure your bills are covered and all that sort of thing. But I also think one has to be quite proactive in trying to generate work as well. In the kind of the nicest possible way. It's a very fine balancing act. I find a lot of time is eaten up, sat in front of a computer, sending off emails to concert promoters and to music societies and clubs, and just to try and generate, concerts here, there, festivals. Let's just dig a little deeper there for a second, because that actually opens up an interesting insight. I think that a lot of people who are considering freelancing, especially younger students, they kind of just wait for the work to come to them, but it sounds like you're very actively pursuing these opportunities. What advice would you have in that regard? Well, yeah, absolutely. You can't rest on your laurels. You really can't. The phone won't ring unless, of course, unless you're lucky enough to have somebody that's kind of watching your back, if you see what I mean, and will kind of recommend you or give you a helping hand. And I think if you've got that, that's great. But I also think, one has to be very active and pursue the things that they really enjoy doing, as well. And just kind of, very politely, let people know that you're there and that you're capable and you're able, you're professional, you have a good attitude. And and that's it really. I think once people, certainly as a student, you're very kind of if you're in an institution for 3, 4, 5 years, 6 years, whatever, it's very easy to kind of be in that little bubble. Mm-hmm. But actually, the professional music world is so much bigger than that. And of course, generating good, great friendships and networking whilst a student within the college environment is great, because you never know who might get an opportunity and might remember you and think, oh yeah, actually, so and so, I remember them from my college days. They would be good for this project that I'm working on, whether it's a composer, a conductor, or whatever. Or somebody setting up a new chamber group or a new orchestra, whatever it might be. But like I said, the actual profession is so much bigger, and yeah, I think you've got to think about what you really want to do. What does your what are your interest? Where do your interests lie? Do you want to be purely an orchestral player, symphonic player? Or do you want to do pit work? Do you want to do West End stuff? Do you want to do, theatre work? Do you want to just be a soloist? Do you want to record? It's endless. Do you want to be a director? Can you conduct? There's all these different opportunities, that are out there. And yeah, I think it's just a case of finding your passions, or your passions, and just sticking at it, and I think eventually things will come one's way, but it's nobody said it was easy.
Absolutely. Do you enjoy the business aspects of being a freelancer? They can be considerable.
Yes and no. It can be a bit of a grind, sending off invoices, and then chasing people for payment. Yeah. That's probably one of the negative aspects. I'm sure you have to deal with that yourself. And waiting for people to reply to emails. Certainly promoters are very slow at doing that. And even if they're booking a year, 2 years in advance for their recital series or whatever it might be, it can get a bit. I sometimes feel it's a fine line of being pushy, but doing it in a really polite way, and I find it very tricky sometimes to kind of actually find that balance and without coming across too strong, because of course that can put people off as well.
Well, of course, it comes down to really what you're marketing is yourself and your abilities, right?
Yeah.
So how some people have sort of a hurdle where they can't get past kind of dealing in that way. They feel almost like they're trying to, I don't know, push themselves on people, or how do you get past that sort of mentality?
It's a hard one. It's a big learning curve, and I think sometimes it can be dependent on who you come across and how they respond to that. And some people will just see it, perhaps again in the kind of case of a young student, that's somebody who's on the way to graduate or a recent graduate. Some people will look at that and go, oh well, so and so is just keen and eager, but other people may take it the wrong way and take it as arrogance or and it's. I don't think there's any right answer, honestly, Sean. I think it's one's attitude. You have to think about your attitude, to just be polite, respectful, and appreciate what comes and be thankful. I think that's the most important thing. And yes, of course, we do have to promote ourselves, but we can do it in such a way that that doesn't alienate anybody, And of course, there will be exceptions, and there will be people that just are not interested. And that's a fact of life, isn't it? You're not always gonna be friendly with everyone. So, you just take it as it comes.
Well, art and playing an instrument is so personal. I sometimes wonder if maybe it's the personal aspect of the art that makes it seem almost a different kind of promotion than it is. I mean, if someone was a freelance, lawyer or plumber or whatever, they would have no problem, just letting people know about their skills and the value they can add, right? But they don't take their skills as a plumber to heart, perhaps, in that way, But for us, it's like, oh man, you put yourself out there, and then if you get rejected, it stings,
Yeah, so. Absolutely. I think it's because the arts in general are so subjective, and that's what that person says is amazing. The next person is going to say, "Oh, I don't quite like that. I prefer this."
Yeah, but there's room for everybody,
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. There is room for everybody. I fully agree with that. Everyone can bring something to the table. I think that's the thing. It's your value. I think what can you bring to the profession as a musician, and not necessarily as a clarinetist.
Yeah, the value added.
Yeah.
So do you kind of separate out the business aspects of being a freelancer and the marketing from your artistic and playing side? Or I know some people view them as, trying to almost be one and the same, and other people are very ardent that they're separate. So how do you feel about it?
I personally try and be separate with it, to be honest. Because it's, I think it's kind of it's like having a home life as well. It's like once you walk through the door, that's it. You've done your job for the day, and it's like, "Hi, honey, I'm home," type of thing.
Yeah.
I personally try and do that. I'm probably not very successful in doing that. I don't know, but I think when I focus on the kind of artistic side of things, I like to purely focus on that, and not to have to worry about did I respond to that email, or did I invoice that parent, or whatever. Certainly if there's a recital program that I'm working on, I will just put the blinkers on and be on that, and concentrate 110%. But like I say, it's not easy sometimes. Obviously, in this modern world now, it is very easy to get distracted. So, if the phone beeps, you've got to have a look and see what it is.
Yeah, it's hard because you get an email or something, and although you're technically off work, it's even if it's 10:30 at night just before you go to bed, you want to check it. Very tough.
Yeah. That's. I think that's the thing. I certainly know myself that I've had to make a real concerted effort over the last few years to actually switch off in the evening. So leave the phone in another part of the flat, and put it on charge in the kitchen or something, and just that's it.
Yeah.
Once it's there, I don't even look at it.
I think it's a good way to be. It's hard.
It is difficult.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Especially in this day and age. I found myself trying to do that once, and I actually would unplug my router in the evening to turn off my internet for a little while. And I found it didn't work, because simply preparing for the next day, like finding a map to my next gig or something, I would, I'm not going to go use a map book or a phone book. I'm just going to use Google for 30 seconds, right? So it's hard to say no in this day and age. Everything's connected all the time, but the always on element is so hard to deal with.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
So you're an active soloist, recitalist. You play with various orchestras. One that I found very interesting is you actually have played with the Symphony Orchestra of India for the past 8 years.
Yeah.
How does that one work?
Well, I did. I don't anymore. But I joined the orchestra in the February of 2011. I had a brief stint with them in 2010, and it was a great experience. I was very lucky to be working with colleagues that I've known since student days at the Royal College of Music. And I met new colleagues as well from around the world. And we did we did 2 seasons a year, so one in February and one in September, and then there was the occasional kind of project outside of that. So they'd bring you in if and when needed, and we did some educational projects as well, and worked with children in various schools in Mumbai, which is where the orchestra is based, or is based. It's still there. And it was a great experience, and I was very, very lucky to have worked with Charles Dutoit, Raphael Piare, soloists such as Barry Douglas and Ilana Backun MoBa, the violinist, and others. And yeah, great training ground, really. To kind of feel part of a proper setup, if you see what I mean, as opposed to kind of going to the odd date, which is just like an ad hoc orchestra and just rehearsing for the afternoon and doing a concert in the evening. So it was a great experience. How
cool though to travel like that to India I assume they flew you to India twice a year then for the concerts.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, we used to do about 4 or 5 concerts per season, but it wasn't just in Mumbai as well. We went to other parts of India. We went to Pune. We also went to Chennai. And certainly my time there, we went to Oman. We played in Muscat in Oman. I've done Moscow as well. And I know since they've also toured a few places in Europe, Switzerland, I believe, after my time. So yeah, I mean, it's generated. It's certainly it's starting to gain a rightful place, I think, in the kind of Asian Pacific orchestras. So it should.
Well, I have to ask, how did that opportunity come up? Because I don't imagine an immediate connection between what you were doing day to day in London and this job.
It's just connections, really. I think if memory serves, it was somebody that we'd done some work together, and who was asked to recommend some players, and my name came up, and then an email came, and I thought that would be a great opportunity.
How valuable do you think connections are for a freelancer? They
are valuable. Yeah, they're important, and I mean, it's. I would say yes. It's definitely beneficial. It can be beneficial to be on the right side of colleagues, and because you just never know. And musicians are generally very nice people anyway. So it's always great to be able to go and socialize and have a drink with whoever, and after a concert or rehearsal or whatever, and I don't think one should see it as networking. It should just be, kind of as part of your kind of daily life, as if you would, if you went to your local bar and just struck a conversation with someone at the bar, and just got chatting. So, I mean, it's definitely important, I think, for people to know who you are and what you do.
I think that's an interesting way to look at it. I mean, if you approach building connections more like building friendships, then it's not about like, hey, I play clarinet, want to hire me? It's more about, hey, let's get to know each other and,
totally.
Finding out over the course of that relationship.
Well, I think so. Absolutely. Because of course, if I suppose it's like being in an office, isn't it? You wouldn't want to go to an office 9 to 5 every day and not get on with your colleagues. Mm-hmm. That would be a pretty horrible existence, I imagine.
Wouldn't feel great, nope.
So I think I kind of treat the profession in the same way. Everyone you meet, try and be friendly and just say hi and
yeah,
get
absolutely.
on with it.
You're such an internationally sort of minded player. I have to also ask, how is it that you became associated with Backun clarinets? Because they're made over here in Canada, and I do know they have an international reputation and presence. But again, there seems to be options much closer to home, which many English clarinetists would consider, or options in France and Germany, for example. How did you get in touch with the Backun instruments, and what made you sort of fall in love with them over other options?
Yeah, well, I first came across those. I mean, I'd known of Maury and had actually met him. The first time I met Maury was in London in 2012, I think it was. No, it was earlier than that. Forgive me. It was 2008. And
he would have just released his clarinets.
Well, yeah, I think he hadn't quite at that point, but there was something coming, yeah. And but I knew through the bells and the barrels and things. And at that time, I was playing on Peter Eaton Elites, which is the English ball, the big ball. And I'd been a big ball player for a long time. With my instruments as a student were Boozy and Hawkes 1010s, so it's kind of following that kind of English tradition. Haworth's, which is one of the major woodwind shops, obviously they make oboes, but have an amazing clarinet department as well, and bassoons and saxophones, of course. They, I remember at the time in 2012, that's right, 13, no, get my dates wrong. It was 2011. I came across, the two, they had two MoBas that had been sent over, just two. And I remember trying one and thinking, oh, this really felt very good. It kind of just fitted my concept, my kind of sound concept. It was a very deep kind of, I'm after a kind of, a woody sound, if you see what I mean. Something that's deep. I'm not after this kind of elusive dark sound that everyone in the US seems to be so with. I wanted something that's more resonant and kind of woody, and the Backun kind of fell into that, and I was achieving that on the Eaton, I thought anyway. But my Eaton Elites were serviced, and the chap didn't do a very good job on them, and it just wasn't right. And so it just kind of came. It kind of seems like fate in a way, that I'd happened to try this instrument, and then my other instruments kind of didn't feel like they had done for the last 10 years. And of course, I'm sure you probably agree with me, but it's a very personal thing, isn't it? Your instrument is a very personal thing to you, it felt like the right time to change. So a bit of social media helped, and me and Maury Skyped that evening, and took it from there really. And I'm very lucky to be playing on those instruments. I feel very comfortable now on them, very very at home. The transition from big ball to kind of small ball, as it were. It was fairly effortless, really. Didn't take too long at all. So yeah. I mean, I'm happy as it is now, and I I don't want to change, and I look forward to the other innovations that Maury and Joel and everyone at the Backun factory have got in store for us.
Were you able to purchase the ones that you first tried and enjoyed so much, or did you have to special order a new set, or how did that work? I know they have long waiting lists.
I special ordered in late 2012, and my B flat came in when did it come? March or April of 2013, and then I got my A the year after. I think it was around June or July. So,
did you go with the Cocobolo or the Grenadilla wood? I've heard some people prefer different ones for different reasons.
Well, I only had the opportunity to try the Grenadilla, and so that's what I chose. And I mean, I have subsequently tried Cocobolo ones, and I do like those as well. I think, ideally I'd like a set of Cocobolo as well, just to kind of feel a bit greedy. But I thought, I like the Cocobolo. My personal feeling was, for me as a player, the Cocobolo would sit really well in a chamber music setting. The Grenadilla helps in a much larger setting, in an orchestra or something like that. But no, I mean, I'm happy at the moment. So yeah.
So we were chatting a bit before we went on air about the Backun factory, and we found out we've never actually been to Vancouver to tour it, but I would highly recommend it. I had the chance just a couple months ago, and it was so interesting to just go through there and see how they make everything. And so if you ever get the chance and you want to see where your clarinet was born, it would be a great opportunity to check it out.
Yeah, it's definitely on my bucket list. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I have a copy of your latest CD here, called English Fantasy, and one of these will actually be featured for the giveaway for today's episode. What were you trying to accomplish with this CD, and what would you like to say to the person who gets the chance to win this item?
Well, I think to the person that wins it, I hope you enjoy the repertoire. My thoughts behind that project. I'm very passionate about the English repertoire for our instrument. There's a lot of it, and most of it's widely unknown. I mean, can I ask you a question, Sean? What if you could just give me 5 British clarinet works off the top of your head right now?
Yeah,
what would they be?
It's not easy. I could list the ones on the CD here.
yeah. Apart from the ones on the CD.
Yeah, not many. It's very, very, very few, and they would be. Yeah. This is. It seems like you've kind of gone off the beaten path of it with these composer selections.
A little bit, yeah. The two major works that kind of bookend the disc, the William Olwyn Sonata and the John Ireland Fantasy Sonata, they're major, big pieces in the kind of the English repertoire. The Ireland was written for Frederick Thurston, Jack Thurston, who was one of the top players I suppose from the 1920s right up until his untimely death of lung cancer in the mid-50s. And Thurston and John Ireland actually really collaborated together, and in fact they actually performed it together. And there's an actual BBC radio broadcast of them performing it together. The William Olwyn was premiered by Frederick Thurston's wife, Dame Thea King. And that was written, if memory serves, I'm sure somebody might be correct me if I'm wrong, in the 1980s, 1982, I think it was. And then the other works on the disc, the 2 works by John Carmichael, he's still around, he's still with us. He's Australian by birth, but has lived in the UK for 50 plus years. He came over initially to study with Arthur Benjamin and Herbert Howells. So I consider him as an English composer. And the other living composer on the disc is Clive Jenkins, who is somebody I've known since about the age of 14, 15. He accompanied some of my first solo concerts. He's fairly prolific. He's been writing a lot. He wrote a Clarinet Concerto, which I premiered many, many years ago. He has supported me throughout my career, and I'm very, very grateful to him for that. And so this was a little thank you, to put that on there. So the 5 pieces, Clive Jenkins, and of course, if anyone wants a copy of that, I can make sure that they can get a copy. And then the other work on there is the Cecil Armstrong Gibbs, and he's another British composer that has really needs more recognition. He's a symphonist. He's written a few symphonies, and these little 3 pieces were written for Jack Brymer towards the end of his life. And again, Jack Brymer is another eminent British player. But that's just a tiny little snapshot of what there is. And I'm kind of, a little pet project of mine is I'm kind of researching a lot more, into the kind of the repertoire and seeing what there is available and digging up some stuff. And actually, I can mention, I suppose here, that I actually unearthed and discovered a clarinet concerto, a late Victorian clarinet concerto by a fairly eminent composer in his day, who was a professor at the Royal Academy of Music, which is actually brand new. It's never been performed, and I'm guessing it was written in about the 1880s. But there's no, in my primary research so far, I've not been able to find anything that actually says that this piece has ever performed. I don't know who he wrote it for, why he wrote it, or when he wrote it. So, and that's something that I'm going to be exploring a bit further, hopefully. And then
who was that piece by?
Played.
Who was that piece by? Sorry.
It's the composer is Ebenezer Prout.
Oh, okay.
So he's probably somebody that's not very familiar to a lot of people. He was more famous actually for doing the novello editions of the Handel oratorios. That was that was a big thing of his, Handel and kind of Baroque music. So, Bach as well.
I don't actually know if I answered your question, but I think that for me, for clarinet composers anyways, I think that Arnold and Finzi are the first two that come to mind. Elgar is my favorite English composer. What other ones should people be aware of and adding to their list of clarinet repertoire to check out of an English origin?
Yeah, of course. Well, you just mentioned Elgar. Elgar did actually write a piece for clarinet and piano. It later became the big viola solo in his overture in the South.
I didn't know that.
The name escapes me. It's
an enigma.
Yeah, but he basically wrote. It was kind of intended for Charles Draper. And Charles Draper was one of Elgar's preferred clarinetists, supposedly. But other composers that we should, English composers should be looking out for, really. You mentioned Arnold and Finzi, of course, but John Ireland definitely, William Alwyn, those two sonatas, they're big meaty works. There are other composers such as Richard Wolfew, who's kind of... he's sort of early 20th century, so 1910s, that kind of 1920s, that kind of time frame. The Stanford pieces, the sonata and the three intermezzi, as well as the concerto, of course. I was just trying to think. Alan Rawsthorne wrote an interesting clarinet quartet. Arthur Bliss. There's loads that one can mention.
Well, this might be a surprise, but here a lot of people, I don't really think, play these pieces that much. So one nice thing about this disc is that for those North American recitalists or students who are looking to expand their repertoire, it's a nice listen through to sort of hear things you might want to play and incorporate into your programs. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, variety is really important. It's very easy to kind of get stuck, playing Brahms sonatas or playing Weber or, and while they are great works, don't get me wrong, there are other great pieces that need to see the light of day. And, that's part of, and of course, I focus on English repertoire because that's kind of my, sort of my heritage, if you like. But I'm also very, very fully aware of there obviously American composers and other European composers that need to be performed as well. So, it's I think it's important to really broaden one's horizons as a musician. And that's I think that's the important thing. Is it's very easy to kind of get stuck in I'm a clarinetist and I will, I have to kind of play the main things in the clarinet repertoire like Mozart, Brahms, Weber, maybe Spohr or whatever. But actually, if you think a bit more outside the box as a musician, and you find something that actually ignites something inside you, think actually that sounds really good, and I think people should hear it, then all more the better. I think it's really important.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think creative programming is such an important part of playing, things like a recital. And I would imagine being on a university jury, for example, I mean, you must just get tired of hearing the same Weber played, for 30 years. I mean,
I expect so. Yeah.
Yeah, refreshing to hear something new. I mean, of course, it's important repertoire to study, but I mean, there's so much music out there. I think this is a really fantastic addition to the clarinet CD repertoire out there. So wonderful. Is there anything else coming up in the future here that would be of interest to the audience?
Well, I have another CD, which I'm one of the guest soloists on. It's called British Serenade, and it's a collection of works by English composers with string orchestra. And my little contribution to it was you mentioned Malcolm Arnold, and I on that disc is the premiere recording of the Concertino by Malcolm Arnold, which is Opus 29A. And for your astute listeners out there, they'll probably be thinking Opus 29. That sounds familiar. Well, it is, because it's the orchestrated sonatina, which Arnold authorized in the 1990s. So it works, and it's a good addition to the kind of clarinet and string orchestra repertoire. So it would sit very well alongside the Finzi Concerto and others of that ilk. So yeah, I think it's available on Amazon to download or to buy a physical copy.
So that one's already out? So,
yeah, it came out middle of this year. So it's
great.
Very, very recent. Yeah.
And what about Recital Projects? What's your next one looking like?
Recital Projects, I have a couple next year that have been confirmed already. One is going to be in Notting Hill, and that's going to be a lunchtime recital. And my the programming for that recital is all going to be living composers, British living composers, and it's going to include the premiere of the Autumnal Dances by Peter Seaborn, the London premiere of the Airs and Arabesques by Lloyd Moore, and I gave the premiere in Bristol last year of that, and there is a subsequent recording which I hope will be released at some point in the future. I'm just trying to think who else I've decided upon for that one. An unaccompanied work by Alan César, and another work by another English composer that I premiered recently. It's very embarrassing that I've forgotten his name. Derek Foster, that's his name. Oh. Derek Foster. So kind of going back to what we were just talking about, I'd like to really, get these things played, and at least then there's a definite record of a composer's work being performed. Well,
that is the goal of those composers. They want to hear their stuff.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And we are, we're their interpreters at the end of the day, and I think it's really important to be playing new music, whether it be contemporary or not. It's part of the process, isn't it? It's just part of the musical process.
Well, if a composer writes a piece and no one plays it, does it exist?
well, exactly. If a tree falls in gets cut down in the woods, it's been cut down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I'd love to do these lightning round questions, but I realize we're coming up on an hour. Do you still have a moment?
I do, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's fire away then. So these are just
Go.
a series of short questions I always like to ask artists, and they're all designed to be answered in under a minute. The first one is, if I were to walk over to your music stand right now, what would I find? What are you working on?
I just put random things on my music stand, but at the moment it's the 18 Etches by Paul Jean and the latest edition of the Clarinet Saxophone magazine.
Ah, nice. What is your all-time favorite piece of music or album?
I can't answer that, Skip.
Okay.
It's a hard one. I have too many.
What is it this week?
Oh gosh. It's I don't have one this week, I'm afraid, but it's,
Okay.
I have too many to even mention.
Fair enough. If you could go back in time and meet any composer or musician, who would it be?
I think I would. There's so many I'd like to go and meet, but I think ultimately I would want to meet Beethoven and try and persuade him to write a concerto.
Oh, that's a great answer. Someone recently, it's funny, they said that they want to see what Mozart would have written had he lived in that era, and I think this is a more interesting answer, because if we hadn't had Mozart, maybe we wouldn't have had such a compelling repertoire for clarinets. So.
Well, that's very true, but I think it also begs the question: what would have happened if Mozart had lived?
Yeah, longer. Yeah, live longer. Do you have a particular book you'd like to recommend to the audience? And it doesn't have to be clarinet related; it could be anything.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm currently reading at the moment The Letters of Leonard Bernstein, so I would definitely read that. It's quite an interesting snapshot on his life.
An American composer, though, does that fit in with your English?
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I got a lot of time for Bernstein.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. So what is the best piece of advice you ever received, and who gave it to you?
Oh gosh, there are many pearls of wisdom along the way, but I think the one that's always sticks in my mind is from one of my teachers, Michael Harris, who was the bass clarinetist in the Philharmonia Orchestra for many years. He said to me, learn the notes and rhythm first, and then put the emotion in after.
I like that. That's actually very insightful as far as like how to learn music. And I think a lot of students think the notes and rhythms are the music.
Well, in a way they are, but you can't play the music if you don't know what you're playing.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really important way of learning. You know, if you think in terms of steps, obviously, if you're sight reading something for the very first time, what's the rhythm? Then the notes, and then once that's all under the fingers, then perform it. Bring your interpretation.
Yeah, make the music with them.
Yeah,
very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Where can we find you online? Do you have a Twitter, Facebook, or website?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at Cigleris. I'm on Facebook, Peter Cigleris. And my website is www.petercigleris.com.
Perfect. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap up?
No, I just want to thank you, Sean, for having me on as a guest.
Absolutely. Hopefully sometime I'll get a chance to come out to London. It's always been on my radar of places to go, but I've just never been out there.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, we'll welcome you with all open arms, and it'll be great to have a pint with you.
Absolutely. I saw a map the other day of the UK. It showed all the bars or something that are there, and it was like covered in places to have a pint. So I'm sure we won't have any trouble.
No, we won't. But there are good ones, and there are not so good ones. But but there we are.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Peter.
Take care, Sean. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Clarinet Podcast. For free content updates, coupons, and a chance to win giveaways mentioned on the show, please be sure to enter your email address at clarinet.com/subscribe. The podcast is brought to you in part by the generous support of its listeners. If you'd like to learn how you can help out, please see clarinet.com/support. Today's episode was brought to you by D'Addario Woodwinds. Sanding, shaping, balancing. For centuries, mastering your instrument meant mastering these crafts too. But now, D'Addario is refining craftsmanship for the 21st century by refining their reeds and mouthpieces with the world's most innovative techniques, so you can spend less time sanding, shaping, and balancing, and more time perfecting your own craft. To learn more about the new era of craftsmanship from D'Addario Woodwinds, visit D'Addario.com/woodwinds.